Hey, Editor Joe here. Today's conversation is a really special one. For the first 28 minutes or so, we talk with Boris about his journey going from college to finding himself dissatisfied with working for a boss to building a company and finding ultimate success even during COVID. And then for the second half, plot twist, Boris talks to us about how he is in the process of selling his company. We actually recorded this last year in December and had a chance to talk to Boris before the transaction closed. Now, join us again next week as we continue this conversation with Justin, the business broker that found Boris and put together this transaction. So, a very unique opportunity to hear about a founder who found success, how he did it, and then ultimately in the process of selling the company, what's going through his mind. Join us next week and hope you enjoy this conversation.
Yeah, Joe, honestly, I'm really excited that we have our next guest named Boris, who's going to be joining us. He's actually someone that you and I helped get his bearings a little bit, or just be a little strategic about 5 years ago now,
I
where
think
he
that's right.
had this
I remember
really cool. Yeah,
wandering around my South Philly block on the phone, talking with you guys.
yep,
And Boris, you were talking about this explosive growth that was happening in your business. And I remember I had to jump off because I had to go to a meeting or something. And I talked to Aaron later. It's like, Boris and I just talked for another hour after you
yep.
hung up. And that was really one of like my favorite memories of just like realizing, oh shit, like I can add value to someone with my experience. So Boris, it's great to have you on our little numbers and nonsense, and excited to catch back up with you.
I'm super excited to dive into stuff with you guys. And thanks for having me.
Yeah, even catch our audience up. Like, what you built was really, really impressive, and the growth that you were able to show in just a short period of time was sensational. Tell us a little bit about the idea and how you were able to execute.
Sounds good. I think the best way to start off is giving you the context around what happened before I started the company, because it just kind of brings this story to life in terms of my journey and all. But um, I first started my entrepreneurial journey uh, shortly after I actually quit college, and I was like very close to getting my degree. I don't think you guys even, I mean, we went to school together, but I don't think you guys even knew about that part. I may have shared that with Aaron, I'm not sure. But I had like three classes left. My entire mindset was going to med school.
Yep.
Like I thought I was going to go to med school. That was the only path that I even knew. I'm like an immigrant. Parents brought me here from Ukraine. So like the concept of starting a business wasn't really like a thing, and especially in my family. My parents were, mom was a hairdresser, my dad was cleaning buses, just to survive and pay bills. So like background network, like I didn't have any of that. But when I was three classes away from graduating college, I looked at my GPA and I'm like, well, this is kind of shitty. And I looked at like what my future would hold. And I was actually very scared at that time. I was like a 22-year-old kid. Probably many kids are feeling some sort of fear, but like I was in a point where like I felt like there's nothing I can do in this world, right? And it was a very depressive state. And I'm not going to go too into it, but it's the reality. It's the truth of what that part of my journey looked like. So from there, I also around the same time started consuming content on YouTube. I think some of the first guys I listened to was like Gary Vaynerchuk. And the concept of starting a business, the concept of like bringing something into this world and uh, that you created, right? For some reason, I don't know if it's an entrepreneurial gene or what, but it resonated with me more than anything that I've ever like learned in school. Because
Yeah.
in school, I was like okay, I gotta pass my bio exam, my calculus
Yeah.
exam, and like it was just that's the world I knew.
There's like clear boxes to check, next
Clear
steps, like
boxes, next
the
steps,
ladder to climb.
the
Yep.
ladder to like it was just like okay, the here's the path. This is what you got to do, and that path, as I went through college, I realized more and more I'm not fitting that path. Something's not working. I think a big part of it was probably some mental health struggles that I had to kind of deal with and go through. And all, but it's like I couldn't put it all on that. There was something there that was missing, and I just couldn't understand myself. Kind of looking back now, I'm like, okay, totally makes sense. I wish someone helped guide me through that. But that's what I found was missing is like that like check the box, take the exam, get an A on it, do the other thing. It just wasn't what I was like wired for. And
Yeah.
in
It
high
wasn't what you
school,
were meant to do.
it wasn't, yeah, there was something there. And like in high school, I was like a straight A student. So like I was programmed thinking like, yeah, I think I'm, it's, school was relatively easy for me. I'm not saying that to brag, but I don't think I really experienced real struggle in the academic sense until I got to college. Didn't know how to study, didn't know how to like organize
Mm.
my time very well. And so in those early days of like exploring my future, I was like, what am I going to do? That I think that's where the entrepreneurial path like resonated with me because it gave me a creative freedom to create, but still like leverage what I personally always enjoyed, even in school, was like math. I was always good with math. I was like that was the one thing in even in college, I like took a few math classes because I feel like I did well. And I'm like, all right, well, at least I'm not failing like bio or whatever. So like it helped me combine the two parts of my brain that just like clicked for me. Now, having said that, that's the context, that's the background. I was like, all right, I'm going to do something. But the 23, 24-year-old kid who just quit college, I mean, the mental health thing, the self-esteem was like totally down to zero. Like I didn't believe in myself enough to like say, hey, can I actually do something? So I worked a few jobs. I worked in the education space. Surprisingly, it was math coaching because I was like I said, I was good with numbers, good with math. But I was researching every day, thinking, what am I gonna do? What's my next move? And so I came across this company, which many people may or may not know. It's called Paint. It was called Paint Night. Operate under a different name, but the concept of the business was they ran these events across bars and restaurants all over the country. They were doing 50 million in revenue, and I looked at that business model. I was able to at the time like understand, okay, this is how it works, right? Like I
Right.
didn't take any business classes or anything, but again, like this stuff just resonated with me. And I'm like, okay, this is a model that I can bring this into the world. And my angle at the time was they're doing paint night, so everybody's painting bars and restaurants. I'm thinking, okay, pretty low cost of like barrier to entry, like I can do this. And so that was the very early days. This was like 2016. So way before COVID, like I was like, instead of painting, I'm just going to bring a few other art products to the market, right? Like they cornered the painting thing. I'm like, well, there's so many more things you can do. You could do soap making, terrarium. And I didn't know this. This was not my background. I just researched it as a way to see how can I enter this market. And so came up with the name craftylab.com, secure the domain, launch the website. I used some basic like Squarespace tools to put something basic together. Eventually, like a few months later, I hired a designer to just make me a nice little something that would work. And in those early days, I probably spent like all in. I think I went $7,000 all in to like set things up, and I started the journey. And how I started, I didn't have a space, I didn't have a venue. I just straight up drove to Hoboken, parked my car, and I went one bar after another, knock on the door. Hey, like during the day, hey, can I speak with the manager, please? Some yes, some no. I would set meetings up with the managers or the owners of the bars, and I'll be like, hey, you probably don't have anybody here on a Monday night. Yes or no? They're like, yeah, it's not too busy. I got a proposal for you. I'll be able to bring in 5, 10, 15 people on a Monday night. All I need is the space, but I can guarantee you that there will be sales for drinks and whatever.
Yeah.
Great. Got my first bar. It was called the Dubliner. I don't know if they're still around,
Oh,
but
I know the Dubliner.
Yeah.
Right on,
that was
is
the
that Hamilton Street?
right by Hamilton Street on in Hoboken. It
Yep,
was
yep.
it was a great venue, like great space, all that. They just transitioned ownership and it was like perfect. We set the first location. I put the thing on Groupon, if you guys remember Groupon.
Oh
I
yeah.
still yeah.
Oh,
That was my marketing strategy.
aging ourselves now.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. A little bit. But like I went to market. One person, no employees, nothing. Like it was, those were the earliest days. And so once I put it all together, connected up the Groupon, the website, I had my location and I had my first customers. It was like the most incredible feeling, getting that $30 ticket sold. And it was
Yeah.
like, wow, like it was just an idea, and it all came together and just started. And I was probably like at the time, maybe like 26, I think, when I like got everything up and running. And then I started realizing, okay, like I'm just going to scale this thing by deploying that same strategy across the entire country. And it was just myself. I didn't raise any money. I didn't have any loans. I was like just trying to
Yeah.
one step at a time. And by 2019, I had 3 locations in New York, 2 in Hoboken, and 1 in Washington, D.C. So like I was starting to kind of right like make a move. Um, and then this was 2019, and I landed my first corporate customer around that same time. And what the way that happened was they came to an event, they purchased a ticket. They're like, "Hey, I really love this. Would you mind doing this for my company?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure. Tell me more." That event was with Jet.com, subsidiary of Walmart. It was my first like $7,000 or $8,000 event that I did. I went from selling $30, $40
Yeah.
tickets to selling an $8,000 event, and that's when the light bulb switched. I was like, ah, that's the market, because I was really struggling to figure out how I was getting booked for birthday parties, like $300 and things like that. And so, just to summarize this whole part of the process, to kind of take at least one takeaway thus far is the biggest learning moment for me was always listening to your market, your customer, pivoting in the direction that obviously makes the most sense for the business. But what got me to where I am now was the constant like figure out, pivot,
Yeah.
listen, pivot. And so I'm going to take a quick pause because if you guys have any questions, I always like to I like to talk, so I want to make sure I'm not like
And I love
overly.
listening to you
But
talk,
Yeah.
but
This is great.
but if
it's
there's
so
anything that
interesting because
I could, yeah.
what you're saying reminds me so much of a metaphor that I talk about sometimes with Aaron. I almost imagine the world and this whole existence we're in. It's almost like this rushing river where every person, every message, every tweet, every YouTube video, it's just more going into this torrent. And as we're growing up, there's like a series of dams or berms that create, shelters. There's like our country that creates a shelter from certain things. There's our state, then like there's our school, there's our family. And like as you grow up, you leave the safest, calmest water and you move into slightly churnier water until you get to a point where you're like, wait, everything I learned was all just like smooth water. I never really had a chance to, and you get smacked in the face. I got smacked in the face in college. And, you know, what you're talking about now is how do you build your own berm to create smooth water behind you so that your employees and your customers can
Mm,
thrive. And it's, you don't, if you build it, they may come, but building and pivoting, like every one of those is slightly changing the angle of the dam to create the right environment so that it's calm enough for them to be able to succeed. I don't know if that's
100%.
just gibberish nonsense, but for me, that's just been how I've started to think about like things being pushed against us and
Yeah.
why it sort of feels like you get hit by things at different times in your life.
I
And
love that.
Boris. Oh yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead. Sorry.
I know. I was just gonna say I love the metaphor because it's something that like everybody deals with in their own way, but like understanding and listening
Yeah.
and pivoting, like making the move right to sidestep something that is just you're hitting a wall, and like knowing where to go and listening to yourself. It's a lot of um introspection needed, I think, too, but definitely something very important to do.
No, and I was gonna say, speaking of the pivoting, like Boris, what you're talking about, kind of reminded me about the Scrub Daddy origin story. Not sure if you guys know what you guys know what Scrub Daddy is, the little sponge, the smiley face sponge and everything. But the creator didn't make it for dishes originally. He actually made it. I forgot what his background was. He was like a mechanic or something, but his hands would get very dirty, greasy, oily, and so he literally made the Sponge Daddy to help clean his fingers and under the nails, all that kind of fun stuff. And he tried to take it to market and he couldn't. And he like
Yeah.
literally put it in a box, didn't throw it out. And like a year or two or however many years later, it's now is what it is. But I think that's one of the most
A
important things.
Philadelphia success
Um,
story, by the way.
yeah. um, and I was just going to say, like, that's one of the most important things about being a business owner and starting your own business and a new concept altogether too, is you can't be stagnant. If you're gonna be standing still, you're going to be swept away by the current. So yeah, like that light going off, and you pivoting, going, hey, this is the niche. This is the I got the perfect product for this. It's not for the Monday nights. It's for the jet.coms and the Facebooks and all that kind of fun stuff. That
Yeah, it sounds like
that,
that's sort of the pivot you're
yeah,
moving into is finding these bigger tickets, right? Just a quick story. One of our friends from college, Vic, he has, there was a story I always remember. Like he used to go down to Atlantic City to play
yep,
poker all the time. And one night he hit it big at the 2-5 tables. So he went up to the 10-20 tables and he found out that the tables were a lot looser because just because you
yep,
have more money meant that you didn't care as much about losing it. All the sharks were at the small tables fighting over the volume versus getting up to the bigger tickets and trying to compete. So it sounds like you were playing in these small tables, the small annies, and you were winning, but you went up to the bigger table, you got a seat at it, and all of a sudden found a huge new revenue source. Like, what did that take? What ended up pivoting it for you?
That first opportunity that I landed was firstly it was the eye opener. I was like, oh, like I didn't even know this existed. Um, and that's another thing about business is you don't know what you don't know, and like things uncover as you build, right? You start learning new things about your market, about a new market. But that first opportunity made me realize, like, I was like, it opened up kind of that new lesson where it's like you can sell, or you can get 100 customers, let's say, selling a $5 product, and it will be just as hard to get those 100 customers selling a $10,000 product. Like the effort needed to get the 100 customers on the five versus the 100 customers on the 10,000 or the five or whatever. Like the mechanics of getting those customers, like you're gonna need to understand marketing and advertising and just getting to that point. And so it clicked in my head. I'm like, well, obviously I'm gonna want to position our products and services for those high ticket, for the high ticket market, for the corporate market. And it's like those lessons started like unfolding. And it was just those early days of trying to like, okay, how do I now differentiate my messaging from away from like trying to get booked for birthday parties and one-off events. And it took a lot of really like learning and figuring all that out.
yeah.
But at that, so as I started moving towards that and realizing, okay, like we, just positioning towards corporate is the clear winner. This was 2019, and then by 2020, early 2020, we start like, started getting our first big opportunity bookings. So we had, and I'm going to kind of dive right into COVID at this point.
Yeah.
So we had Verizon booked us for an employee retreat or something. This was like early January. So the booking like was made. It was made for April. Google booked us for an event at their
Wow.
headquarters in New York. And like these big names started coming up, and this was January, February, we're starting to like finalize details. And then March, you guys remember, everything shut down.
Yep.
Rudy Gobert ruined the world.
Yeah, basically. So things are shutting down, like this whole COVID thing. And now I'm like, all right, okay, so I thought I had this thing going, or I thought I would be able to like make this whole thing happen. And I'm like, I don't know anymore. And at this same time, just for again context, I was actually working my first corporate job because in 2019, another little piece of context information, I ended up going back to college to finish my degree because I wanted to have some sort of, it was mostly my wife who, girlfriend at the time, pushed me. She's like, you got to get your degree. I'm like, fine. So I ended up getting my degree and then ended up applying for like a more secure income because at the time I was still a struggling entrepreneur. I was not making like enough money to support myself or any of that. So I ended up working my first corporate job. This is 2020, and at the same time, the whole everything's shutting down. So my business, which I was running on the side, just was not panning out. Then um, I had a co-founder at the time, and we worked on revamping the website slightly, minor change to saying, instead of us being like in person events or like whatever, we kind of made a little tweak to virtual events, now offering all these four products we had. Within a few months, we started getting inquiries from Microsoft, Deloitte, KPMG. I mean, the top firms across all different sectors. And I'm like, I'm like watching this happen, and the seeds that I planted around like I want to target corporate, it's like happening. It's in front of me. It's happening. These companies are reaching out. And it was probably by like, I want to say September of 2020 when I pulled the resources together to execute on delivering these virtual events. It took a lot. That was the biggest pivot that we've done, and it was clearly the most probably uh, um, monumental pivot that led us to just the explosive growth that we've had. Just for context, we were doing like maybe 30,000 in sales before COVID. After COVID, we peaked at around 1.3 and then hovered around a million in sales. And this was with no funding, no venture capital, like purely bootstrapped business.
And was it you were sending the materials to the company and then they would send it to their people so that you'd all jump on the call and do it together, like team building virtually?
Essentially,
It's
yes.
such a
And
cool
so,
concept.
what we created a simplified system where you can go on our website, book an event for 1,000 people in less than 2 minutes. Like it's that quick, because on the back end we linked up all of the different hosts who lead the events. We linked them up with the calendars, so it took a little bit of building a team around making this all work. And so we were probably one of the first platforms that like had the instant booking tool available for this type of stuff. And you could literally just go book an event. You will instantly get your Zoom link. You'll instantly get confirmations. You don't have to talk to anybody.
Hmm.
Although we found, side note, like we end up having to kind of, as it is a service business, like we do work with our clients very closely and put together these events with great detail. But in those early days, yes, we would get you'd be able to book, and the shipping and logistics portion we had an operation for. And the way that worked, Joe, to your question, instead of us shipping to the company, we had an address collection process where an employee would be
Mhm.
able to just put their address in and we ship directly to them, eliminating the friction of like the organizer having to figure all that out.
Yep.
We made it very easy, very
Well, it sounds like
streamlined.
the whole thing was that. I mean, I've tried to do
Yeah,
events before, and you're talking to the manager, they're sending over a contract, you're going back and forth on terms, and then like you don't know what the support's going to be day of. So to be able to book confirmation, Zoom, and send this link to your employees, we'll get everything to them guaranteed, and then it happens. That's the important thing. Making it easy to book is going to get you in the door, but then actually having to execute is where you're going to turn it into a business.
100%. And so that execution was difficult. It was the earliest days of that pivot were probably some of the most like really difficult parts of my life, probably because I was working a full-time job. Now we're so this was September, now we're getting into October,
Yeah.
November, and so we saw this whole uptick volume happen in November, October through December, which is our holiday season, which ended up being our highest volume season every year. So like we now are anticipating it, but the first one was really tough. I mean, I was working a full time job. I actually started an MBA program at that time because again, I didn't know where I knew I enjoyed business, I knew entrepreneurial, but I didn't know where things would go. So I was like doing my early MBA classes, and the business started to like explode. And I was literally packing boxes in my mom's basement for those first 3 months of like mass volume. I was trying to hire people like as fast as possible. It was a chaotic time, but we executed in December of 2020 alone. I think we did 35,000 in sales, and that was the first time I saw anything like that because we were doing 30,000 in sales for the year prior to
Yeah.
Hmm.
that. And so I was like, whoa. And then 2021 was the complete game changer. I think we did 1.2 million that year. And just kind of again, no funding, nothing. We just kind of scaled up the operation. I hired fast and just started, executing on events all over the world. Like we were getting booked with big name companies. The business really started to like be very targeted for corporate only. And I just kind of really zoned in on that. I declined opportunities for like birthday parties or B2C opportunities and just focused the operation on B2B entirely. And that took us to where we are now. And so it's been a very rewarding journey, but also just challenging in many ways. But it the entire time felt like I'm finally doing something that aligns with my DNA. So that's the beautiful part about it all.
What a story. That's incredible, Boris. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for sharing all of that. I mean, the ups and the downs, the pulling yourselves up literally every step of the way. It's a really inspiring story, and it shows like the value of grit and determination and being willing to also be humble and admit, hey, this can get better. I got to listen as opposed to tell the market what it's going to be. Um, now, I think the interesting thing, the plot twist here is that you're planning a change with your business. Is that right?
Damn. So over the probably last year, I I see what's going on with AI, and obviously everybody does, right? And so when I recently onboarded a CTO to our company, um, all of the ideas I've had about bringing AI into our own operation are now coming to life because of this new, very key strategic hire that we made, and I was very lucky to have come across him. And that's just that's a whole other story. But having a good network is very valuable, as I'm sure
For
you
sure.
guys are well aware. And so once we connected, we've made massive developments on our current business, and I started positioning some early stage concepts around how we can potentially uh, spin off or develop a whole new product from just leveraging the tech we've built into our own business. And so in all of what with that all going on, I started exploring the possibility of what it might look like um, to exit this business through a merger or an acquisition, and I started having those conversations with a business broker, and the conversations were meant to just be conversations. I never really thought anything would come of it or anything, but
That's
um,
how they get you. It's a slippery slope.
in what's interesting is that the many lessons learned across, I could dive into any, but just on this topic, one of a really amazing lesson is that sometimes, like, I know in my life, I don't know if this applies to anyone else, but I know I feel like I undervalue myself a lot. Like I kind of think like I don't think I could do that, or I don't think that's possible. And it's just a limiting belief. That's
Yep.
that's what I'm beginning to uncover. It's like, and then I'm like, how many of these do I have? These limiting beliefs, because I never thought that, like, I just kind of explored that thing. Like, yeah, let's see what an acquisition might look like. I had, we were getting like 3, 4, 5 offers within weeks of listing,
Wow.
and I was like, this is real. I'm still wrapping my head around it. But we are very close to landing on a deal that I'm very happy with, that will allow me to pursue a lot of what I would want to pursue within the realm of tech and AI, and kind of like AI enabled uh, business and products within that space, while still building and running the business that I built. Um, and yes, so that's kind of where I'm not currently able to divulge too much, but generally, yes, the biggest pivot of my life at this point is the possible merger uh, with a publicly traded company, and that is just, I've never ever imagined any of that to happen, or to develop um ever. Like, these are not things that I'm like, oh yeah, one day that's going to happen, like, and a lot of where I'm at now, I think, has to do with pushing myself to explore possibilities that, again, like, push beyond those limiting beliefs, because I know I struggled with that, mostly because of my whole college thing, when I'm like, I at one point thought, like, I don't think I can do anything in this world. I'm too
Hmm.
dumb. Like, I really had these thoughts. So to be here now, it's really interesting what human potential is possible for anybody. But
Yeah, and
that's
just
where we're
to
at.
pull back for the curtain for a second for our viewers, we are talking to you, Boris, now before the close, but we're not going to release this until after the transaction is done. So this is a really unique experience for us to talk to someone in the middle of the closing. So really appreciate you being willing and transparent to talk through it. We've talked to a lot of buyers and their struggles, but I think it's so important to hear about it from the other side, and to hear the
Yeah.
journey you went through, the emotions, the highs and the lows. I think it really ties in that a business is so much more than the tax returns and the P&Ls that you're
Yeah.
looking at when the broker sends you access to the data room, like, and if you get stuck in a search for too long, I think a lot of people can sort of lose the humanity in the business. So I just thank you for sharing and like helping us understand all that. But I know I've been hogging the mic. Aaron, I'll turn it over to you. How do you want to dive into this sale?
Yeah, before we do that, I just want to touch on something too. Boris, you were talking about how you were struggling with college, and I guess all three of us are deadbeats when it comes to school. And we all got our degrees. But and again, Joe, I think I've told you several times. I'm like, I'm going to find it very difficult to explain to my kids why getting good grades is so important when I personally never valued it that much. I've always been more of a practical learner, and again. One of the caveats that I've always found frustrating. One of the goals of our podcast, Joe, is to for our listeners that maybe have a W-2 job or are in college or in high school or whatever, and figuring out what they want to do with their lives. Like you don't have to just go through the system. I feel like again for especially for our generation. It was like, hey, go to college, you go get your degree, you go get a good, stable job, and you just do that till you die. And again, for a lot of people, that's not a bad thing. But I feel like entrepreneurship and risk taking really is like looked down upon. And I have no idea why. I also feel like that's a very,
Well, I think I can
archaic
give
way of
you
looking at things. Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
I think the world's fairly cynical. And the
Yeah,
thing with cynics is they're often considered wise because it's easy to see when they're right, but it's very hard to see when they're wrong. When
yeah,
you just say no to everything, it is so easy to be like, oh, look, that didn't work. Haha, I was right. But
yeah,
you don't see all the gains they lost, all the opportunities they missed out on, and
yeah,
like the memories that you don't get a chance to make, the challenges you don't have to overcome that inform your future growth. So just putting yourself out there, going beyond those berms is scary and hard. And it's often discouraged because a lot of people tell you, what are you talking about? I spent 35 years at a factory. Why would you jump around jobs every year? What do you mean? Like, why don't you want to go out to the bars with your friends? Like, you're doing what? Making candles at a bar? I mean, it's so easy to like punch down when someone's trying something. But I think like you were saying, Boris, you spend so much time in your own head. And if you are being negative to yourself and the world is being negative to you, you get stuck in being thought that there's no way anything can happen. And I think one of the big changes I had to make in my 20s and 30s was realizing that all of those negative thoughts I was having were coming from me, and learning that if I'm not my own best advocate, if I don't believe that I can do something, I won't believe someone else when they tell me.
yep,
So being able to like push through that, and like that conversation we had, Boris, when 4 years ago was one of those moments for me, realizing that those experiences I had can make a meaningful impact for people beyond just providing a loan. It's actually being able to talk through strategy because I've looked at thousands of businesses, which many people will never get a chance to look at. Like you ask a person what the average laundromat makes, and they'll never be able to tell you. I'd love to hear sometime, but it's just a lot of like really interesting lessons that are all now culminating for you in this chapter, at least. And really would be interested in hearing, what the journey, or I guess the end of this journey has been like. What is your process been like going through the sale? And obviously we don't need to talk about numbers or anything, but is there any sort of hiccups or like unknown unknowns you came across through this process that you wish you known beforehand?
Man, I that is a great question, and because I feel like it's so fresh that I haven't even had a chance to like process everything. Um, but what one of the like what I'm currently feel like experiencing is that the journey. Well, the first part when we just kind of kicked off with the listing is live and right, and when that first offer comes through to me, it was like, whoa, like, wow, this is real. Like someone out there sees the value in what I've built and it's really happening. So there's this it reminded me of the first time that I sold my first $30 ticket of like, hey, wow, like you created this thing and someone bought a ticket, and it's like as you can look from the outside and it's like, well, you sold $30, not a big deal, but it was a big deal. It's like you're putting something out there in the world that didn't exist before. And now Now it's the sale of an entire business, right? So I think that, well, the first kind of like I said, it's that overwhelming, like, wow, whoa. The second is that I'm like, wow, like I feel like I could do this again. Like I don't know,
Right.
maybe that's like a confidence boost or something, but I'm like, wow, this is a thing. Like people do this apparently, right? And so I'm probably my experience is just a human experience of like, wow, I'm learning about what's possible in this world. And again, as a business owner, there were many years, there were many moments, many times that I struggled, really struggled with, am I going to make payroll? Am I going to be able to survive another month? Like real, like stuff that I don't like, not many people talk about. Like it's, when I was listening to Gary Vaynerchuk, my early days, like I didn't hear about that part. And it's like experiencing all of that and then being at a point where I'm like, wow, like I can actually I can sell this thing, like this whole thing, all of the emotions, all the stuff. Here it is, right? And but I having said that, I also like, although I know a lot of people refer to their business as like it's my baby, like I don't want to let
Hmm.
it go. Like I don't feel that. I don't have a sense of like, oh, like I did all this stuff and like I don't like I'm attached to it. Like I don't feel attached to it. I do see like the clarity of what the transaction is, even though all of that emotion went into it. And I think it's partly because maybe it's like I said, maybe it's just in my blood to like keep going and like figure out my next move. And I'm
Yeah.
really
You
like
want to
I
pivot.
feel, yeah, I
You
want
want
to
to
pivot. Like I
evolve.
feel good about like
Yeah.
I know some people might not feel comfortable with change and like I don't know, like a pivot or a new journey or whatever. To me that's actually my comfort zone. Is like
Hmm.
I don't when things start feeling like it's the same thing over and over, I'm kind of ready to like, all right, let's do the next thing. And so I'm finding that out about myself too, where I'm like not at all like in any way tied to, like any of it. But navigating the offers, just kind of going back to the current process of it all, has been a very, very interesting um journey navigating the offers. And one of my takeaways thus far, haven't had a chance to fully process everything, but one of my takeaways is that um going into this whole process, I had the one thing that was a non-negotiable for me. And as long as any of the offers that come through met that non-negotiable, I was willing to explore that offer, right? And that was something that, like, if you guys have buyers that are, um, you know, exploring opportunities, the maybe one piece of advice, I don't know if I can even say, but like it would be to understand what are the non-negotiables in the deal.
Yeah.
And I'm not an expert on this, right? I'm literally just going through it, but it was just kind of from my personal journey. Um, I tried to make that clear to the buyers of like, hey, this thing has to happen, and everything else we can work around. But
Do you
that
mind
was
me pushing? Is that like a number, a person that
okay.
has to
Yeah. So
stay, or
no, no, no. Yeah, it was a number. It was a
okay?
cash number. I won't reveal that maybe on this podcast, maybe
No,
later on.
please.
But
No, that makes sense. It's like you're buying now. You can't go into something and say, "Oh, let's just see what happens." Right? You need to anchor your expectations and say, "If this isn't the number, I am so much happier doing what I'm doing now."
but here's the thing, here's the caveat to that. It's not actually the valuation number, because from the beginning of the deal, I thought I was like, I want to, hit this number. When I started seeing offers roll through, creative financing is a very interesting thing. And so what I ended up, after seeing some of the first offers, I'm like, okay, so what that non-negotiable was not necessarily the valuation of the deal, but the cash I'm getting today.
Yeah. And
That was
Boris,
No
the
seller's notes, no deferred
well,
compensation, no
here's
trailing
here's
percentage.
the thing. I wasn't against any of the creative financing as long as I can hit a minimum cash today number. Everything else, and it's like that's why I'm like, look, the total valuation of the business, I understand. Like, it's probably rare that you just get cash up front. I mean, I'm sure it happens, and I don't know. You guys will know that way better than me. But what I realized was like, okay, like I'm not seeing a lot of like offers like that. So I was like in my head, I'm like, okay, no matter how the deal works out, creatively financed, I'm open to it. I just need the cash today has to hit a certain number, and then we can talk. And that was
yeah.
where I was like, okay, that's you know what
And
I'm moving
Boris,
forward
we actually were, we were actually kind of talking about how this or in other deals or other offers were being structured with what was coming across your plate. And one of the things that we kind of talked about, and again, Joe, like we actually had, Marlon on a couple episodes ago, and we always focus on from the buyer side, the risks to the buyer, but there are also risks to the seller, such as, again, if you don't get all the cash up front, you're carrying a promissory note, you're pretty much going into business with that buyer. As a lender, that's what you're doing. Do you feel comfortable with their ability to perform operationally to support the debt? And Boris, to what
And
you're kind of talking about
as a
is,
lender, that's why I always
yeah,
like to see a seller's note on there, because it says that there's more equitable sharing of risk between buyer, seller, and lender. But
exactly.
it's also like that's our prerogative to ask for that. It's not necessarily something that the buyer and seller have to agree to, and they can do the deal without us. But it's sorry to cut you off, but it
No,
is
no, you're
interesting.
good. Yeah, and also like equally important too, Board, for any deal that comes across your plate. Firstly, one of the first things I said too was make sure you lawyer up. Again, if you're buying or selling a business, make sure you have an attorney to read the purchase agreement. Because Boris, to your point about getting the cash that's non-negotiable and then carrying a promissory note, there are clawback provisions. I was literally talking to you about that earlier today. For example, when I bought my CPA firm, we paid for it all cash up front. But we had a clawback provision. If a certain percentage of revenue dipped in the first 2 years, the seller is going to have to come back to the table and write a check to us for that revenue lost. And that's actually a very common type of a clause that gets put in, especially when there's client concentration risk, that type of stuff. If it's more of a retail type of thing, like a Dunkin' Donut, like a burger shop or something like that, um, you know, clients should continuously go there. They're not staying necessarily for the owner. But in a lot of professional services or where the owner's really facing a lot of the clients and managing those relationships, these kind of clawback provisions are very common. And the other piece too is sometimes these deals, especially in private equity, they require an earnout. So they'll say, hey, we're going to give you this much up front, but you got to commit to work with us full time for the next 2 years. After which you'll get an additional earnout. Also, there's that clawback provision. So your earnout may be diminished over those 2 years based on how much of a book of business you maintain. Again, that is a lot more on the professional service side of things. But Boris, you kind of are a little bit of a daywalker in this regards, because I would argue that you are a little more in line with professional services. Yes, you have inventory and all that kind of fun stuff, but at the end of the day, you're providing a service to these larger corporate clients. So again, these are things that, when you work through the remaining pieces of this transaction and work with your attorney, making sure that, you're navigating those specific things carefully and going in eyes open. And again, I've had a number of clients and just people, in my network, again, in the accounting industry, there's a lot of private equity coming in. And so, there's a lot of stories that I'm hearing from, colleagues of mine, ex-colleagues of mine, or, people that are in tangential to my direct network, about people just going, yeah, I got my earnout and I quit the next day. Or I not got my earnout, but I got my cash up front. They needed me for 2 years to get my earnout. I quit. I didn't care. They walked away from the earnout because they had the money. They had enough money to make them feel comfortable. And they said, you know what, I'm not going to, just kill myself for the next 2 years to make someone else's equity bump. And again, Boris, for yourself, that's going to be something that's very important for you to consider regarding this deal that is coming across your plate right now.
Right.
Because again, what do they want you on the hook for? What are the potential risks you're going to have? And then again, getting cash up front is great. But again, a part of that is also the consideration potentially in the course of a promissory note. And again, how confident are you in their ability to actually service it? And again, that's the risk for any seller in a transaction. And that's, we could have a whole episode just on the seller side of the risk, but Boris, these are the potential landmines that you're going to be navigating for the next few weeks.
100%. And
Yeah.
it's hard to really, know these things, and like you're aware of like the risks, right? And it's on the seller to uh make the decision, make the call, and go along with it, or not. Like it's so, yeah, exciting times.
Boris, we're coming up to the end of the podcast, or I should say our little time crunch, if you will. And so we really just like the end of the podcast to give you, our guest, the opportunity to kind of shamelessly plug whatever you're looking for at this point. Again, right now, you should be, knock on wood, having the company sold. So you don't have to ask for potential buyers in that regards, but you mentioned potentially a new venture, or, who would you like to meet, or what are you kind of looking for right now that, again, anyone in our audience, if their ears perk up, you would like them to reach out to you in regards to something you're looking for?
Yeah. So, well, my next move, very likely may be within, aligning forces with the buyer and working within that organization in the AI and event technology space, AI enabled solutions. Um, and I'm always, always open to meeting people within that space of building. And really, one of the things, kind of it's becoming more of a side, not side thing, but like, given the journey that I've had, like, if anybody wants to reach out and talk through their journey, like, I'm there to hopefully pass along any wisdom that I've had. And I've been lucky to have people like you guys, and just generally having advisors has always been, for me, I such an immense value, just to throw back ideas, and just having
Yeah.
someone in your court that sometimes you feel like, um, you are failing as an entrepreneur, and you're like, I don't know who to talk to about this, right? And I'm always like willing to talk, and if there is anybody, I'm open to that. But otherwise, like, um, if you're in the corporate event space and you're looking to book an event, craftylab.com is, I would say, one of the best solutions, especially for global events. We've
Yeah.
actually, I think, started to really corner that market better than any of the competitors, and something that we've recently rolled out to make that happen. But otherwise, yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. Want to book an event, craftylab.com. I'm open and willing to meet new people. So really appreciate
Amazing.
the time with you guys.
Absolutely.
Well,
Always a
thank
pleasure,
you
Boris.
for
Thank you.
coming on. It's an awesome story. It's great catching up with you. It's awesome to see, the way that we all sort of grow and can still jump on a call and just catch up and hopefully, pump each other up a little bit.
100%. 100%. It was great reconnecting with you guys.
Awesome. And
Likewise.